I just want, yeah, thank you, team. I want to let you know I've got two great team members assisting me with Jen and Brandy are working behind the scenes and they are be tracking your questions and just making sure that I don't miss anything through the presentation. So thank you so much, Jen and Brandy, for being here to support. My name is Melanie Roop. I'm the Senior Director of Loans and Advisory Services. I'm joining you today from the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Over 20 years ago, I was working as an account manager in a Vancouver, Maine branch at a traditional bank, managing a credit portfolio. I spent my days talking to male CFOs and business owners. And at that time, women were also earning university degrees in business and other faculties and performing at the top of their class. And I had this aha moment that women could start and grow successful businesses. They just needed to know how. So since then, my work has focused on helping women start and grow successful businesses. And it's been an incredible amount of fun to watch their entrepreneurial journeys of so many women. But I've also seen the challenges that women face in accessing capital from lenders and other funders. And sometimes it's due to unconscious bias of the lenders, and often it's due to a lack of understanding of the women entrepreneurs on where to find money and how to access it. So since joining WEBC 5 years ago, I've seen hundreds of women apply for a loan with WEBC and spoken to many who have applied for different types of funding outside of WEBC. In the past 3 years, I've also been involved in investing in early stage company as an angel investor, working on deal flow selection. So looking at companies that have a potential for early stage investment, doing due diligence on these companies, and then investing personally with a group, other group. I don't invest alone. And it's more fun to invest with others because there's always lots to talk about. Many of these companies are led by women. Just recently, WEBC also launched a government-funded program to help women master investor Q&A because the research shows that women get asked different questions than men when requesting investor financing. And this has led to women getting less than 2% of venture capital money in Canada and elsewhere. So that's a real problem that the government and WEBC and others are working to address. So let's get started talking about sources of capital and using the right money at the right time. Just want to review quickly if you are not familiar with WEBC, if this is the first time. Otherwise, if you've been to other sessions, you will have heard this before. But WEBC supports women entrepreneurs across the province, and we are here to support you every step of your entrepreneurial journey and meet you where you're at. Our services, we have key programs. Our loan program provides 5-year term loans up to $150,000 per borrower. And we have information on our website about that. We also offer complimentary business advice with a business advisor, such as Archana that you see on the screen here. She's one of our business advisors. And they can answer your questions, help you with cash flow projections, help you prepare a business plan, all kinds of questions. Whatever you might have, if you're stuck, a business advisor is a great resource. We do the skills development workshops like this one and all kinds of different topics and programs. So check our website under events to see a list of our skills development workshops as well as other ecosystem partners offerings as well. We do mentoring, very important to have experienced women entrepreneurs support you on your journey, whether your startup or growth. Having a mentor is really helpful to just bounce off ideas and not have to, make all the same mistakes everybody makes along the way, learn from their experience. And then a supportive community. So even when we come to these sessions, it's not also always all not only connecting with WEBC, but it's connecting with your peers. You know, who else is attending this session, and is it somebody that you know or can reach out to and share that journey and be part of this supportive community? So welcome to WEBC, and let us know how we can support you. So today's topic is, should you self-fund to profitability or use other people's money? And that's a question that we get asked a lot, which is the reason that we thought we would set up this session to share the information with all of you who are interested. And the simple answer to that question is, it depends. The number one reason that businesses fail is because they run out of money. So it's really important for you to understand how to use and manage money in your business to be successful. As the daughter of a high school math teacher, I never like to hear the statement that girls are not good at math, because I know that that's not true. If numbers aren't your area where you feel strong or at least comfortable, it is a skill that you can learn with education and practice. So don't be afraid of the numbers. Lean into learning the numbers and how to read financial statements and how to manage your cash flow, because that's going to help your business be sustainable. So I really encourage you to put your hand up, talk to a business advisor if you need help in that area. So in this session, what I'm focusing on are the different sources of money and the right time to use it in your business. And we actually call this process building your funding puzzle. And every business owner decides the type of money to use and when to use it. So we'll look at a couple of scenarios later on in the session to give you examples of how businesses have built their funding puzzle. So now we're going to dive right into the meat of the session. And on this one slide, I've just summarized the kind of 5 key ways to finance your business. You could do others out there, but they are often a variation of one of these 5. So we'll go through each one by one. I'll take questions. If you pop them in the chat, I'll go through them and then we can ask a few questions if you have them. Otherwise, we'll carry on. And this is really just to introduce the different types of money and when to use each one. And once you know what they are, then you can do a deep dive after this session to get more details. And it's really important that how it might fit in your business so that you can decide which one and how to put together your funding puzzle for your business. So the first one is personal funds, and that's the money that you put into your business or you use to start your business. And so if you start with $10,000 or $5,000, some people start a business with $1,000. When you're starting a business, important to remember to track all of the expenses that you are incurring to start the business. Even though you're using your personal funds, that is your personal investment. That is your equity contribution. And if you track it, you will be able to leverage it to borrow, to use other people's money. The advantage with personal funds is there's a flexible repayment. At some point, you're getting a repayment of that money. It might come in the form of cash generated that comes back to you from your business, or longer term, maybe you sell your business or you pass it on to a family member, or some way you eventually get repayment, and that repayment is flexible. Important part about personal funds when you're using other people's money, it demonstrates to other people that you are committed to your business because you've invested your own personal funds. And that's an important part. When I was a lender in the bank, we would say, well, if you are not confident to invest your own money in the business, why would we lend money to you? So we want to see that commitment. um, to a certain extent investors, but often your ideas has an innovation or you don't have enough money. So investors less so, but certainly with banks want to see that commitment. The next one is debt or loans. You might get from a bank, you might get from a credit union, you might go to a developmental leader, a lender like WEBC. So other developmental lenders would be WEBC, Community Futures, if you're in a rural community, BDC, they position themselves as the bank for entrepreneurs. And then if you're Indigenous, there's some Aboriginal financial institutions. So certainly we can help you with those other sources of capital. There's also Women's Enterprise Organizations of Canada, WEOC.ca has loans as well. So key to know about loans is they're non-dilutive. So dilutive means you're selling shares. When you get a loan, you're not selling any shares, you retain 100% ownership. You have a contract for repayment. They are outlined in the terms and conditions for that funding that you're getting. And so you know exactly how much you need to repay and when you need to repay it. But a loan requires cash flow. So the business has to be generating cash so you can support those monthly repayments. Sometimes there might be a period of interest only, and then you start paying principal and interest. And in terms of what we call leverage, when you look on your balance sheet shows all your liabilities, and it shows your equity. So that means that your equity contribution is 25% and your debt is 75%. So just think about that for a moment. If you have, I'll do some easy numbers here, $10,000, then that's your equity, and you can borrow against that equity and leverage it 4 times. So you could get $40,000 and have a total of $50,000 to work with. And that is an important consideration why using other people's money is how fast can you go? You know, what opportunities can you take advantage of if you have that money that isn't yours, that's other people's. So a bank or another lender will look for a business plan and cash flow projections. And we'll come back to why those are important in managing risk in a later slide. Moving on is grants. So there are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars available in grants from the government and other organizations as well. And grants are also non-dilutive. So you're not giving up any shares to get a grant. Most grants are project oriented. So we'll get a phone call from somebody and say, I'm starting a business and I want to know about grants for women entrepreneurs. Well, there's no grants to just start a business, but if you need to hire people, there could be a grant you may qualify for to hire somebody. Or if you have staff, you may get a grant to support their training and skills development, to build capacity for employment and for work. If you want to export your product or service into another company, your project is to expand into new markets, there could be grants for that. And certainly on the innovation side, if you're a startup and you're doing something that's unique and innovative that nobody else is doing, and you're doing that research and development, there are many tech grants and innovation grants available, and often a lot of money in that area. So when we hear about grants, the innovation is where there's a lot of grants, but there are also many other grants. If you're an existing business now, another grant to consider is the Canada Digital Adoption Program. that has a grant for businesses from small right up to large. And so that's another good one to check out. Sometimes a grant requires matching funds. So that means that if you get a grant, for example, can export grant, you need to match 50%. So they'll pay 50% of the expenses and you need to provide the other 50%. So you have to have some working capital in your business in order to leverage those grants. A few years ago, there was a women entrepreneurship grant offering grants of $100,000 to women-owned businesses. And it was a very nice grant, of course, at $100,000 that you didn't have to repay. But there were some women-owned businesses that couldn't take advantage of it because they didn't have the money in order to match that funding. So it's just a consideration to be aware of. So you're using your working capital, you're using your cash, your equity, so that you can leverage these grants and not having enough money and so trying to get a grant to bring in. You have some money there to leverage to bring in additional money that can then work in the company. When you're looking at grants, just to be aware, I think it's an important distinction. They're called entitled versus competitive grants. So the government will open up a pool of money, and then you have to apply by a certain time, and they review all the grant applications and select certain ones that are the best or that meet their criteria or that they want to support. So that's a competitive grant situation versus other entitled grants where these grants are available as long as you meet certain conditions and as long as there's still money available in the grant bucket. When grants open, they're always opening and closing because they run out of money. And so you want to be aware of the grants and jumping in quickly to apply and be ready to apply. An important consideration in grants is you often need to be an incorporated company for 2 years. So if you're looking at using grants, you may want to consider incorporating sooner rather than later so that you get the clock ticking on the grant criteria. So you have to take the time to apply. You have to understand what the grantors are looking for so that you can write an application that speaks to what the boxes that they want you to tick. And then you have to, once you get approved, you have to report back in some way that you're using the money the way that it was used. You're providing receipts. You've got to keep track of receipts. So it's a great source of money, but it's not free money. So just being aware of it. But when you're in business and you're looking to use other people's money, it does take time and effort. So it's just another consideration. There's 2 organizers called hellopocketed.io. Maybe Jen, you can type that in the chat. Hellopocketed.io. And the other is Granted Consulting or getgranted.ca. Maybe someone can check on that exact one. So 2, Granted Consulting. You can sign up monthly subscription so that you get regular updates, or you can just use their database and access it. They have some free access available. So it just depends if it's an area you want to invest in and go after grant funding. And sometimes it depends on the business, on whether there are many grants available or a few grants available to make it worth your while. All right, let's move on then to equity funding. So this is dilutive, and it's a whole other area. And we just launched these 2 cohorts of helping women master investor Q&A because the research shows that women get asked different questions than men. And there's a TED Talk, Dana, D-A-N-A, Kanze, K-A-N-Z-E, Zeddy, which Kanzi, which talks about why women get less venture capital money than men and how they get asked different questions. So what we find is because women get less venture capital money, it's a new area for women founders to finance their business through equity funding. And so the group that I joined is called Women's Equity Lab, where we pool our money together and we go through the deal selection, the due diligence, and then making the investments. And we learn by doing. You can also look at Front Funder. So it's Front Funder, but no E, and it's one word. And what they say is they democratize investments, which means anybody can invest. Angel investors need to be accredited because it's a very high risk. But through Front Funder and other platforms where you can raise equity for as little as $250. But even on that platform, you have to go all in. If you decide to raise investor money, because it takes time, you have to do hundreds of pitches to get one investment. You have to find investors that are aligned with your investment, and then they have to be a right fit to the company. So while equity funding is dilutive, that means you are selling shares. So when you start, you own 100% of the shares, but you may sell 5% of your company. So if you go on Dragon's Den and you hear the investor wants a certain amount, which represents 5% of the company, then that tells you what they're valuing the company at. But when you sell shares in your company, you're bringing in investor money, and that increases the value of the company. So with just your investment, if you invest $1,000 in your company, but you bring in investors, they may value all your innovation, your idea, your traction, your proof of concept. They may value, maybe you've got already some customers, maybe you've got some employees. So they value all of that you've already built in the company. So they're not buying in for the $1,000 valuation that you've put in there they're buying in at maybe $1 million valuation because they see all these other things that you put into the company to build it up and see the potential in the company. And so you're no longer 100% owner. If you give up 5%, you have 90%, 95% of the company. But you now have a business that's valued at $1 million and not 1,000. So there's some real value increments that come from equity funding, but it takes a business that has an innovation. Investors are investing in innovation to exit or sell out for 10 times or 20 times or 50 times what they put into it in a period of 5 to 7 years. So equity funding takes a lot of time and effort, and the investors expect a significant growth prospects. And so lastly, we get on to customer funded. And I really wanted to include this one because there are businesses that build their business model to be cash flow positive and profitable, and then they reinvest the profits. So one way is just continually reinvesting because you've got a profitable business and cash flow positive, that you're investing money that's generated from your customers into the business. The other way is when you're selling a product or service, you ask for payment in advance. And so your customers are paying for something you haven't yet delivered, and then you have the money to build it, to process it, to send it to them. And you're not relying on a lender's money, you're relying on your customer's money. So if you think about lawyers, will often ask for that payment in advance. They haven't done the services yet, but they have this retainer to bill against that pays for their staffing costs and whatever, and then they just settle it up with a bill. I was thinking the other day about this. I like to go to a yoga retreat on Bowen Island. So I'm booked to go in November, and I've already paid for my stay there. So that business has my money because I'm booked, and I think you can make payments in advance, progress payments, or pay a deposit now to hold it and then pay later. But I just paid all at once, so I don't forget. And I like the business, and I want to support the business. So think about your business, and maybe you don't ask for full payment in advance, but can you ask for progress payments, if that makes sense? And think about how to use your customer funded funding rather as other people's money to support your business. Are there any questions, or how are we doing with questions? Maybe some things have come up here. Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, yep. Okay, yep, great. Brandy's putting a lot of things. Front Funder, Hello Pocketed, great. Women's Equity Lab, yes, that's a group that's investing across, yeah. CDAP, wonderful. Pay up front. Yep. Someone noted the CDAP, which is the Canada Digital Adoption Program. You have to pay up front and then they reimburse you. Yeah. The government wants to see that the money is being used as intended. This is taxpayer money, and so it's their audit to say you're approved for this, but you have to pay up front and then get the claim the expenses back. Okay. Okay, I'll glitchy. Oh, okay. Good. All right, so I'm going to move on. Just watching time here. Come on. There we go. I had to put risk because we often hear that women are risk averse. They don't want to take risks. They just they don't want to take risks. Uh, they have a they don't have a growth mindset. We would say growth mindset is very important to be an entrepreneur. So how it's really important that we identify and mitigate risks. And women are not risk averse, they're risk aware. I say, just ask a mother whose son or daughter is taking a gap year traveling in Asia, who will come up with this huge long list of risks that could happen. Mothers know all about risks and what could happen. And so they think about it, they're risk aware. Whereas one of the dragons says, men are cowboys. Like they just go for it, and yeah, it's a huge risk, but they're not risk aware. And so they lose huge amounts of money because they haven't thoroughly assessed the risk and been aware of the risk. So ways to mitigate your risk. And these are things that by doing these things, you educate yourself on the viability of your business and how using other people's money through the planning that you do, you demonstrate the business has the ability to repay other people's money. So you plan, you do a business plan, or you have a roadmap that shows you the steps that you need to grow, and you have milestones that you need to meet along the way so that you're always going to that milestone and ticking off that milestone. And if you don't meet the milestone, you're recognizing and making adjustments so that you can meet the milestone, and then you go on to the next milestone in your roadmap. And so that's keeping you on track. And it's also letting you know very quickly when you're off track so you can make adjustments. You do different model projection scenarios. So when you do your cash flow projections or your financial projections, you do an optimistic case. And most of you start off doing an optimistic case. And when a business advisor looks at it, you'll have to say, okay, well, we have to scale it back a bit. So do a worst case and then do an expected case so that you know if things go really well, how you're going to manage. And if they don't go so well, how are you going to get through if the cash flow doesn't come through as expected? You know what you have to do and how you're going to manage that. Women like to borrow smaller amounts of capital more frequently. So this is one of the problems with the banks is they want you to borrow $300,000, but you only want to start with 50,000, and you want to work with 50,000 and pay it back, and then come and get some more, or you want to start paying back 50,000, see how your business is progressing, and then apply for another 50,000. And so building up using other people's money incrementally, not all at once, that helps you see, oh, this is working, so I'm going to go the next step. And then consistent financial reporting. So getting your financial statements, your balance sheet, your income statement, and your cash flow projections. Making sure you're getting those on a regular basis, depending on the size of the business. It's monthly. If you're still a little smaller, it could be quarterly, but review them. We had one client who had a business hadn't paid. There were partners involved, two partners. And the business had a huge, like $250,000 PST outstanding to the government. It was like, you should be reviewing that so that you see that. It shouldn't be a surprise. You know, your bookkeeper will not always tell you. The bookkeeper is putting in the numbers, but you need to look at the financial statements and go through it. And if you need help reading your financial statements, our business advisors can help with that. So be risk aware, but educate yourself so that it's not this big black hole, but you understand where that path forward is and how your business can support using other people's money. So a couple of things about where entrepreneurs go wrong using money. So I got 6 of them. Your business plan and projections. Should you have one? Yes or no? I mean, people will get in, they'll do a business plan. I saw one the other day that submitted for a business plan review was 14 pages, and it was just very high level. And it gave an outline at a high level of the business, but it didn't go into enough detail. And the devil is in the detail. So going through and doing a business plan, it doesn't have to be 100 pages, but it needs to include the necessary information. We have a resource called How to Write an Effective Business Plan, which just outlines what needs to be in your business plan. So some people do a pitch deck, or they do other not so formal things. You know, it's important, you have to divide up your time, but business plan really helps you with that planning and knowing where you're going and how you're going to use other people's money, and that you can pay it back. So for our loans, we require business plan and cash flow projections. For most other lenders, for debt financing, they require business plan and cash flow projections. If you're going for equity financing, they don't really read your business plan. Investors don't read it. They look at your pitch deck and they ask you questions, and then they do due diligence in your data room to see all of your financials, and they look at the information themselves. Okay, good debt and bad debt. There's good debt and bad debt. We hear people say, no, I don't want to get a loan. Well, if you have $10,000 and you're only using your money, what are the opportunities that you're missing? What are the things that you're not able to take advantage of? Or is your growth slower? Then using the plan that you have in the financial projections, how could you use other people's money to support the startup and growth of your business? One of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is they use their credit cards for their startup expenses or other expenses. What is the interest rate on a credit card debt? Right? It's very, very high, 20+%, 22, 25%, versus a loan, which today 10 to 14%. So there is good debt and bad debt, and make sure. The other thing you want to do is look at using debt and matching it up with an asset. So if you're buying an asset that has a long-term life, then get a term loan against that asset, rather than paying cash for it up front or using your resources up front. So think about good debt and bad debt. Focusing too much on interest rates. Right now, we know the interest rates are high because they were low for so long. But if you have a plan and you look at what you can do with other people's money and you build in interest as an expense in your cash flow projections, if the return on that money from the business is higher than the interest you're paying, then that's a good investment and you don't need to worry so much about what the interest rate is. Also looking at the amount of the loan. If the loan is smaller, the amount of interest that you pay is less. So even when the interest rate is high, it may not make a lot of difference if the interest is 10% or 7%, because the amount of money that you need to borrow is smaller. Sometimes, for example, a mortgage, it's very important to look at interest rates because we see that already in people's payments. Reading and understanding the terms and conditions of the financing. Well, we see that a lot at WEBC with our loan program. Not understanding, because we get questions of people have not read and understood the terms and conditions of the financing. So especially if you're working with investors, if you get some of their instruments, we have seen clients put into bankruptcy because they got offside with the terms and conditions of other people's money. It can also happen with banks if you're offside on your maximum debt to equity ratio. So I talked earlier in the presentation about having a minimum or a maximum debt to equity of 4:1. And if you get offside, it may be, that the bank can come to you. So you want to keep lenders informed. You want to understand the terms and conditions. If things go sideways, talk to your lender, talk to the person who's giving you the money and tell them what your plan is. And right now, banks are quite flexible with rising interest rates and mortgages and other sources of types of products. They want to work with you to get that money back, as WEBC does. We'll work with you. Asking for enough. How much money do you need? So your cash flow projections are going to tell you. Don't be conservative. So you might think you need 25,000, but if the business can support a loan of 50,000, maybe ask for the 50,000. What can you do with 50,000 versus 25,000? Sometimes it's possible through WEBC, you could ask for 25, see how it goes. Within 6 months, ask for the other 25 and draw down in 2 steps. So making sure that you ask for what you need to give you a runway of, 9 months anyways, sometimes a year. And then you can always go back and ask for more. Yeah. And then I wanted to mention about taking money from friends and family. Always have something written down. Have an agreement, make it formal, that the friends and family understand the terms that they're lending you this money, if that's an option. And as a startup, you might not be able to make payments for a while. They might be able to make payments in a few years. If that's how you've set up that money, you need to, be clear that you need to start making payments in 3 years. I think it can lead to some unhappy scenes if there's a misunderstanding. So always document if you're taking money from friends and family. All right. So let's just take a look at a couple of scenarios, how other people have built their funding puzzle. And I have three scenarios here, and these are real examples of how women founders have funded their business. So the first one, she self-funded. She used her own money, I think, focusing on positive cash flow from the business. Then she was able to leverage and access grants. So as her business grew, she needed to hire more people. And so she was able to access grant funding to hire people to add to her team. This allowed her to grow her revenues to over $1 million, which is a significant milestone for women-owned businesses. And then she was able to raise equity. So the advantage in using her own money and leveraging grants to build the business and build the revenues in the business, that was when she went to get equity from investors, her revenues were already over $1 million. And so the valuation would be higher than when she was a startup. So that was her funding puzzle. The next one kind of did the opposite thing. So she established a minimum viable product and she had it tested and she had some traction. She had enough of a product that she could tell a good story with investors to go out and raise equity. So she then brought in investment, I think, I can't remember the amount, but several $100,000 that she brought in. That investor money is equity on her balance sheet. There are no repayment terms, so it's not a liability. Those investors hope to get a return on their money when she sells the company and exits in some way, and then the investors get their money times X multiples. So she used the equity that she had raised from investors, and then she got debt financing to finance a purchase of equipment to set up some manufacturing. Right, excuse me. Okay, and then the last one, she leveraged equity with debt so that she had equity and debt in the company, and then was able to go out and apply for grants. And so we talk about having that working capital available so that you can match funds with the grant funding that's available. Excuse me. And so that would be an example of that $100,000 grant where they had their own equity and they had some debt. So they had enough working capital that when they were successful in um, um, getting that $100,000 grant, they had the funds available to be able to. All right. All right. So I hope you found that helpful. Sorry. Um, I wanted to let you know about some upcoming sessions that may be of interest. On every second Tuesday at noon, we have a business loan information session, and you can register for that to learn all about our loan program. And you can register for those sessions on our website. We also have a great webinar coming up on pricing. We get a lot of questions about how to price your product and service. And so Kelly Masson, who is one of our business advisors, doing that session in January called Passion and Grit, which is really great to help you build your resilience tool. After the pandemic and all the current things going on, on being resilient is a key characteristic of entrepreneurs. And then investor speak is investable innovation. We are doing cohorts of investor speak, and we'll be running another one in February. So the intake is open to apply for that program if you have a business that's suitable for equity funding. So thank you very much. I'm sorry about the coughing at the end, but I would love to take your questions. And also, Dan is going to be posting a poll just to get your feedback on this session.
So it looks like there's a bunch of questions in the chat, Naomi.
So let's open it up for questions. I'll stop. And let's go back. I'm just going through the chat as quickly as I can. Oh yeah. Good morning. Could you choose? Okay, here's a good question. Do you have to put your personal funds when you ask for a loan at the same time the bank does, or can you? Yes, if you have financial statements, your equity will show on the balance sheet. But if you don't have those financial statements, we often ask for evidence. So showing your bank statements that you've spent these funds and giving us a list of what your startup expenses were, and just showing evidence that you've done that can be considered equity. So we just need to see that you have money and seat up. Okay, hello Pocket.io, someone put in, which is great, and branded and front funded. Is there a class for investors to teach them not to ask women different questions than men? Yeah, great question. And actually, we're working with a professor in Halifax who developed this program that we're delivering. Uh, yeah, she said she's explored that. And I know in being in sessions with investors, you can't control what the investors are going to do or say. And they need to be able to ask whatever they want to ask because they're who are giving putting in their money. So trying to control the investors is not doesn't work. But we can control what the founders say and how they respond to those questions. And that has proven that, yes, it is successful in leading towards more investment. If you signing up for consulting services to help you with your funding puzzle, our business advisors can work with you on that. So they would just want to understand your business, how it's funded, and if you have financial statements, they can see what you've already got and then can help you figure out your options. Question here, how do you determine if it's better to use your own money or borrow? I think it depends on your business model. So when I talk about the first scenario, that founder, her business model was she had enough of her own money and customer funded, so reinvesting her profits back into the business to scale and grow at a rate that she was comfortable at. I mean, some could argue, what if she had borrowed earlier on? Could she have scaled and grown faster? And if you have your business plan and your cash flow projections, you know what the roadmap is and what the milestones are, and you can see that the business can support a loan in the business you may be able to buy that equipment that will help you to scale up faster or to hire that person or to do different things that will make progress faster and also be able to take advantage of opportunities. We see some women who have opportunities, but then are not able to take advantage of, for example, a purchase order from a big customer because they don't have the funds to deliver on that purchase order. Well, if they were to go and borrow the money to give them the working capital so that they could do the upfront work to deliver on the purchase order, they could scale faster. And a credit from BDC via the Canada Digital Adoption Grant Program. What to do with investing that 100,000? So in that program, Canada Digital Adoption Program, you work with advisors who help you to develop a plan for digital adoption. And then based on that plan, they build a budget of how much money you need, and then you apply for the grant funding to cover that. So if you can qualify and get the $100,000, you would just have a bigger plan. And to apply for that funding, you need to show what that plan is that you want funded. So it's working with the expert advisors that help you put together the plan. On what to do with that money. Next question, when you ask for a loan, yeah, I think I came in. Do you have to put the personal first, amounts more frequently? No. Okay, so is borrowing small amounts of capital more frequently the recommended course of action, or should you be doing it differently? That's your funding puzzle. How much do you want to borrow? How much do you need? Every business is different. So what we know from women is they want to borrow smaller amounts in more frequent increments because that's the way they build their business. That's the way they put their funding puzzle together. We have seen other female founders who they borrow the full amount from us, plus they borrow from their bank, plus they put in their own money, and sometimes their budget is $1 million. And they have a project or a business that requires $1 million investment to start up. So I'm talking about a childcare center, a daycare center that needs that kind of money. So it's really up to the business how much you borrow and when you borrow it. And so it's not a recommended course of action, it's what's appropriate for your business. Yes, working with a business advisor, talking to a business advisor is complimentary. Just reach out to our client services and explain what your needs are so that we can connect you with the correct business advisor, or sometimes there's another resource that is more appropriate. What is included in financial reporting? That's your balance sheet, your income statement, and your cash flow projections. I'm about to incorporate my business, and I was told that I should incorporate with just one class of common shares and then wait for investors to dictate a different structure. Since I'll be approaching a variety of different investors for small amounts, I think it's better to set up my corporation with multi-class shares. Does anyone have insight into what they choose and why? Julia, um, the investors all have different needs, so you need to talk to a lawyer on that one, and get their advice. That's a legal question. Should you be updating your business plan and how often? Yeah, yeah, whenever it needs it. I mean, I think it's good. A lot of entrepreneurs do an annual retreat just sort of a review, annual review for themselves and planning for the coming year. It is a good idea then to review your business plan annually and just see where it needs updating. Um, it's a good idea. What is better, getting a loan debt or using a business line of credit? Okay, great question. So when you get a loan, it's a term loan. So it has a term repayment. Ours is a 5-year term loan. Um, that means you get the money at once and you start paying interest from the time the money is dispersed to you. Whereas with a line of credit, you have that credit available. So you might have a $10,000 or $20,000 line of credit. It's there when you need it. It's more intended for cash flow support. So you may have to buy some supplies, then you have to process it, and then you sell it to the customer before you get paid. So you use your line of credit to buy the supplies, you do the work you need to do, you ship it to the customer, and the customer pays you back. And that income is paid onto your line of credit so that your line of credit is back to zero. And then you do that again. So you are revolving in and out of your line of credit is the intent for a line of credit. If you're buying a piece of equipment that has a longer life term, you should be using a term loan and not using your line of credit, because that money from buying that equipment is not coming back into your line of credit. And so you get this kind of hardened part where you have a $20,000 line of credit, but 10,000 is perpetual. You never go below 10,000 because you've used it to buy that piece of equipment and there's no money coming back. If you're starting a retail business, is there a recommended type of funding given high chance of failure? Well, we try and avoid that risk of failure to get the risk tolerance to a manageable level. There's always a risk in failure when you're an entrepreneur, but you want to do and look at how to mitigate the risk. So that's where, if you're starting a retail business, the business plan is very important. And putting together your different scenarios, usually the worst case scenario, because that's a tough business in retail, but there are a lot of businesses that are very successful at it. So put your business plan and your cash flow projections together, and then talk to one of our business, just have a chat and see, have you done everything that you can to assess the risk and put plans in place to mitigate that risk. Yeah. Someone mentioned about how devastating it is to watch those small retail spaces closing. Yeah. Um, yeah, what we are seeing is landlords are increasing rents, that it's just unaffordable for small businesses, and it's mind-boggling to us because we don't know where the landlords are going to get tenants from if they keep raising their rents. It's an unfortunate situation right now for sure. Is there support from WEBC for writing a business plan, which gives you an outline? We have a paid service, which is a business plan review, which is a cost of $220. We have a business advisor review and give you feedback. You go make changes. The business advisor reviews the feedback and gives you feedback again for a second time. You make changes, and then we do one more review and give you the feedback. Get some good feedback, because our business advisors are reading business plans constantly and can tell you where your business plan is strong and where it needs more work. Yes, great. YWCA Power Up Ready is free, and you build a business plan as part of the program. Lots of resources out there. How long should a business plan be? One of the best business plans we saw was only 11 pages long, can be in bullet point form. It just has to contain all the relevant points. It also depends on the business as to um, how much detail is needed. So, wow, it's 11:02, and I have gone all the questions, I think. Digital arts. I want to say no. Our loan is just a generic loan. Most banks have a loan. It doesn't matter on the type of business that you're starting. Good recommendation for a lawyer. Yes. Julia. Okay. I will send you something. Okay, there's our poll. Please take a few minutes to answer the 4 questions. Be so helpful just to give us feedback. Okay, Julia, I'll reach out to you. I just need to know type of business you're doing. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate having so many of you on. And reach out to us if you have more questions. We're always here to help and happy to support you on your journey.
Hi, Melanie. Can you hear me? It's Julia.
Hey,
Oh,
Julia.
I think
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you
I
for
typed it in
staying
the
on.
chat. I typed it in the chat, but I'm just letting you know. It's like I'm opening like a sauna and cold plunge studio.
Okay. Okay. Just let me think. Okay.